I'm also pleased to announce today an additional commitment of $6 billion through our Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin announcing his country's largest security assistance package for Ukraine. That happened on Friday following a meeting with the Defense Contact Group. It comes just days after President Biden signed the U.S. foreign aid bill into law, officially paving the way for $61 billion in military assistance to make its way to Ukraine. I spoke to the Pentagon's press secretary, Major General Patrick Ryder, about getting that help to Ukraine as soon as possible. But we started our conversation on the Israel-Hamas war and the U.S.'s message about a Rafah offensive. Major General Patrick Ryder, thank you so much for making the time, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Want to start in the Middle East, if I can, and get from you your sense about the latest conversations happening between the U.S. and Israel when it comes to moving forward with a military offensive in Rafah. Is that now inevitable, and how confident are you that Israel can protect civilians?
Well, sure. As you highlight, we continue to have conversations with our Israeli partners. And when it comes to the situation in Rafah, you have a scenario here where over 1 million people displaced, and certainly an urgent humanitarian situation. And so while I won't speak for the Israelis when it comes to any operations, one of the things that we both agree on is the need for Hamas to be defeated and to not pose the kind of threat that it did on October 7th. But importantly, the U.S. continues to underscore to our Israeli partners that we don't support any type of operation unless civilian safety is taken into account and the evacuation of civilians from the combat zone in order to prevent any kind of civilian harm. Additionally, we're also very focused on ensuring that humanitarian assistance can get into those who need it most. So those conversations continue with our Israeli partners. At this time, right now, we don't see an operation as being imminent, although we continue, again, to talk with the Israelis and encourage these key aspects of anything that they do to go after Hamas.
Of course, that foreign aid package, most of it went to Ukraine, which we'll talk about, but $15 billion also went in military aid to Israel. I think as a sign that the relationship between the two countries is ironclad was the language that was used. What will that money be used for, is your understanding?
Yeah, well, and it's also important, as you highlight, to put into context the U.S. relationship with Israel. As you know, we've had a long-standing security cooperation relationship that goes over many decades. And while there's an understandable focus right now on the conflict with Hamas and Israel's fight with Hamas, it's also to remember that there are other threats in the region that can affect Israel and can affect regional stability. I mean, just recently you saw Iran launch an unprecedented attack against Israel, over 300 air threats, over 100 ballistic missiles, 170 one-way attack drones, and 30 to 40 cruise missiles launched at Israel. Now, fortunately, Israeli air defense and allies and partners work together to essentially prevent the vast majority of those from getting through. But it just underscores the threat of the neighborhood that Israel lives in. And so it is both policy and law within the United States that we will support Israel's qualitative military edge. And it also is part of our approach to ensure working together with allies and partners in the region to ensure regional security and stability beyond threats that may be in the headlines today.
Well, Secretary Austin actually on Friday said that Iran should question the effectiveness of its weapons system after its failed attack on Israel. Do you think that Iran got that message already because of the way Israel and allies helped to defend Israel? And what are your concerns about whether or not they did get the message?
Yeah, well, we certainly hope so. And again, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I can't speak for Iran.
No.
But as Secretary Austin highlighted, I mean, they launched this attack with every intent of creating death and destruction inside of Israel, and they failed. And so from a defense planning standpoint, it certainly begs into question their approach and the message they were trying to send. So certainly from a U.S. standpoint, our focus all along has been on preventing escalation and ensuring that the conflict that you see right now in Gaza does not become a regional war.
I want to get the latest from you, if I can, about the floating pier that is being built off the coast of Gaza, which is so vital to trying to get more humanitarian aid. Can you give us a sense of when it will be operational, how it would work a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Well, the good news is that pier, that temporary pier, actually initiated construction yesterday. So we have several vessels that are, miles offshore from Gaza that are constructing really two parts here. You have a temporary floating pier, and then you have a causeway, and that causeway is the part that's going to be connected to land in Gaza once it's completed. And so right now we're projecting probably early May, you will see this capability come online, and then importantly, essentially serve as a mechanism by which the international community can continue to flow vital humanitarian assistance into Gaza.
I want to ask you about Ukraine, if I can, as well, because Secretary Austin held the latest Ukraine Defense Contact Group meeting. The Department of Defense announced that new U.S. security assistance package. Out of that meeting, the foreign aid bill finally got passed. How quickly should we expect materials to get to Ukraine, and how quickly could that make a difference?
Well, first of all, I think it's notable that this contact group took place on the 2-year anniversary of the first contact group. And at that time, shortly after Russia's invasion, a key assumption of President Putin was that the international community's resolve would wane. And what we see 2 years later is 50 nations still coming together, very unified and very resolved to continue to help Ukraine. So that is a very promising thing. In terms of rushing aid to Ukraine, we've already started. We anticipated, we obviously planned ahead and tried to make sure that we were poised to start moving aid as quickly as possible. So the list of aid that we announced this week, obviously some of that will take longer than others, but we also have capabilities and supplies that we can start moving now, and we're doing that.
Is there enough time, do you think, for Ukraine to get those weapons, that equipment, and for it to make a difference on the battleground from a military perspective?
Well, I think so. I think it will make a difference. And, not to be Pollyannish here, the situation in Ukraine is dire. I mean, we continue to see Russia making incremental gains as ammunition stocks have run low. But the good news is that help is on the way. And so by getting them this urgently needed ammunition and air defense capabilities, we think that Ukraine will be able to continue to hold the line. And then importantly, we're going to continue to work with Ukraine to look into the future to enable them to take back sovereign territory and deter future Russian aggression. So we continue to be committed to Ukraine and we'll support them for the long haul.
Lastly, let me ask you, Major General, why the Pentagon changed its mind about long-range missile deployment? Because we learned that the U.S. recently sent some, and it was our understanding the Pentagon was not in favor of that. Why was that decision made? What prompted that change?
Well, sure. Well, a couple of things. So first of all, one of the key questions that we always ask ourselves whenever contemplating security assistance for Ukraine or any other country in the world, is what is the impact, the potential impact on our own military readiness? Sure. Things have changed over the last 2 years, and as we've started to produce additional long-range capabilities within our own military, and our stocks have been replenished, we recognize that we could provide this longer-range capability to Ukraine without the same types of readiness impacts that originally had been in consideration. Okay. So that's an important aspect. And then also, as we see the evolving situation on the battlefield, and making sure that, again, as we have done from the very beginning, that Ukraine has what it needs to be able to defend itself.
Major General Ryder, thank you so much for making the time for Canada, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.